It's time to get started with watercolors. If you're over 50 and you've been thinking about starting a new hobby that is artistic in nature, but you have no idea where to start, you don't know what supplies to use or where to get them, or what to do, this is a video for you. Using a few simple supplies, I'm going to show you how to go from a blank canvas to a masterpiece. The footage you're going to see is shot in real time so that you understand my process from start to finish and get to see this medium in action. So let's dive in. In today's video, we're going to do some watercolor painting using our Magic Daffodil template. If you don't know what this is, the Magic Daffodil template is a template that I've designed, and it's great for beginners to get practice into the different kinds of art mediums. So with this particular template, I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. This isn't actually magic. The magic happens when you keep using this over and over. You build the skill, you get the muscle memory going, and you get better and better until you can do this daffodil in your sleep, no matter what the medium is. This is my magic wand. We're going to put away the magic for a moment, though. Let's get rid of that and talk about this. You can get your own copy of this template for free if you sign up to my email list, which is linked in the description box below. Go sign up there and grab your template, and you can create this too. Now let's go through the basic supplies you need for watercolor painting. You need a template if you're going to use a template. If you just want to raw dog it and throw some water and paint down, have at her. You're my hero for doing that. Nothing wrong with that, but in this instance, of course, we need our template. And I have already transferred it onto watercolor paper. In the beginner series, I'm going to talk a lot when it comes to painting about the materials and techniques, because when it comes to paint, and that's whether it's watercolor, oil, acrylic, gouache, it doesn't matter, they tend to need a little more attention. So this might be a bit of a longer video. Watercolor paint, as the name implies, requires water for you to activate the paint in order to get it down onto the paper. Let's take a look at the supplies. Aside from our template, we need paper. I am using this 7 by 10 inch watercolor pad from Artist Loft, which is, I think it's Michael's brand, pretty inexpensive. And for beginner stuff, it's half decent quality. When we get into the second video in the series, where we go more in depth into watercolor, we'll talk more about supplies and quality and where to spend your money. But for now, any watercolor paper will do. I like to say get the best you can afford when it comes to the paper. Paper is very important. Like I said, we'll get into that into the second video. And on this watercolor pad, it is just literally a pad of watercolor paper, just like any old normal writing pad. And I have already transferred our daffodil template on here. So we have our watercolor pad, and of course we need paint. So I am using the Mei Lang set. This, I'm going to tell you right now, for a beginner, this is what I would tell everybody to get. Whether you do or not is up to you. In terms of versatility for the range of colors, ease of use, and price, it is hands down my favorite at the time of filming. So this is my, as you can tell, well-used, well-loved watercolor palette. Everything I use, I will list in the description box below as well. So you don't have to worry too much about that. As long as you get something close or that has a decent range of colors, like the rainbow, you should be okay for this tutorial. So we have our paint. And of course, we need brushes to put the paint down. I have just a couple here. We have our Paul Rubens brushes. I've got 2. And then this was like random. These mint green ones are random ones that I got off Temu. And I know Temu, there's a whole lot of hate around that company and everything, but this is stuff I have, so I'm using it. And when it comes to watercolor paint, I'm not going to get into the types of brushes too much. We're going to do that in subsequent videos. I typically use round brushes when it comes to watercolor painting. And round brushes are literally that. If you look at the brush, if you were to look at it from above, it is completely round. From top down, it looks like a circle. This, in my personal opinion, is easiest to work with in order to lay down the water and, of course, the paint as well. And what I have here is I have two larger brushes. One's quite big, as you can see, in comparison to paper. I'm just going to splay it out and let you see that. Bristles are very soft. It's great for holding lots of water, which for watercolor is a handy thing. And then a medium-sized one, a little bit smaller. And then we have two little brushes to get into the finer detail. These bristles aren't as soft as the Paul Rubin ones, but depending on what you're doing and what you want to do, sometimes you want brushes that are a little more snappy, a little more rigid than these super fluffy, floofy brushes that feel like your pet cat. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's our brushes. You also want some water. I've got a glass of clean water here. If this was a larger project, I would have two glasses, one for clean and one for dirty water. Dirty is to clean off your brushes for the most part. Because this is a pretty simple project, I'm not too worried about that. Not going to get too dirty, but there's our water. Paper towel. Always, no matter what you're doing, whether it's paint, whether it's gouache, whether it's pastel, it's always good to have some paper towel and or scrap paper on hand to test and to clean off your brushes and supplies. So we've got our paper towel. And then we have tape. Tape might seem like a bit of a strange thing to have for watercolor, but it is very, very typical when doing watercolor painting. We'll get into that in more of the videos, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tape and I am going to make a border around my flower, right around here, and contain all of the water inside the border. So tape is really good for that. You'll see it in action in a moment, but what I've got here is I have a roll of, this is probably what, maybe half-inch tape, half-inch wide, by a company called Meeden. They're really great, actually, for beginner artists, students. Quality and price of their stuff is actually quite good. And then I have a couple little rolls of what is called washi tape. And washi tape is specific to doing watercolors, very well known, lots of different brands and styles. But one of the things I like about washi tape is that it's very vibrant and it's easy to see. Whereas if I put down this Meeden tape, it's going to blend right into the off-white of the page. It doesn't matter in terms of, hang on, I got to find the end here. Okay. In terms of performance, you have to test a bunch of different tapes to see what ones you like best. And it's the same to be said for brushes, for paper, for anything, any kind of supplies that you're using. And that's no matter what form of art you're doing. So let's get our tape down and make our little border. Oh, see, we're running out there. Okay, get rid of that guy. It's a good thing I grabbed a couple of rolls of this stuff. The thing I don't like about washi tape, one of the things, is that the rolls tend to be quite small. They're very small, so you don't get a lot of tape. And depending on the brand, sometimes water can seep under or paint can seep under. They don't seal off as well as some of the other brands do. I've even used black electrical tape. I have used just regular painter's tape, stuff from the dollar store. Got to try a bunch of different things and see what works, as I had mentioned. We have this all mapped off. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to take a waterproof pen that is black. I'm going to use black today for this example. And I am going to go ahead and trace the outline. Normally, I would not do this, but for demonstration purposes, I think it's important for you to see where your boundaries are when it comes to water paint, and you'll understand as we go through the tutorial. So I'm just showing you what I'm doing here. Normally, I would just go, yeah, here's my template and carry on. But in this instance, like I said, I am outlining all of this in my black waterproof ink and close counts. So I'm just going over my template, and there we go. And then once this is on, I'm going to erase that graphite pencil, which is our template. Get rid of that. And there we go. Do our little scalloped edge of our little trumpet here on our daffodil. I really don't know if it's a trumpet, but That's what I call it. That's what I call it. Don't know what the proper term is. That's all right. We're not that picky on this channel. Not at all. Okay, and what have we got? There we go. Not perfect. I like it better without the pen, but that's okay. I'm going to take my eraser. I've got an eraser here. And now I'm just going to go around and make sure I'm getting rid of. Sorry if I'm shaking that. Shouldn't be shaking it. My tripod is not attached to the table, but hey, you never know. You never know what's going to shake the foundation. Okay, so that should be pretty good. I'm going to clean that off. And here we are. So now we have our lovely template. We've got our waterproof pen for our outline. And now we're going to jump in. So as mentioned, of course, watercolor paint is activated by water. And there are a bunch of different ways you can do this and a bunch of different ways that you can lay the paint down onto your canvas, which is our paper. Watercolor is typically laid down in layers. You put a layer down, you let it dry, you put another layer, you let it dry, put another layer, let it dry. And we start from lightness to darkness. And you can make watercolor paint light or dark in a couple different ways. Let's start working our petals so you can see how the first layer of watercolor will go down. I'm going to take this smaller of the big brushes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it into my water. I'm going to make sure it's got quite a bit on there. And I am going to go in here, plain water. And I am going to paint this petal. Did I call it a leaf before? I might have. I don't know why. I have this thing about calling petals leaves. Usually I'm talking about a petal. Okay, so now this petal is wet. It's very wet. Lots of water on there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this same brush. I'm going to get a little more water. And we want our petals to be yellow. A pale yellow at the tips and a little bit darker as we get towards the center of the flower, like where the trumpet is. So I'm going to go into this lemony yellow color. I already have a little bit of yellow down here, and it's okay if your paints mix a little bit. I'm going to put my yellow down here, and I want this paint to be really thin. So I'm going to get some more water, and I'm going to flood that. And it looks, as a little test, like that. It's even a bit darker than I want. I'm going to add some more water. And it's going to get lighter and lighter the more water I add. So let's just go with this. Well, I'll put a little bit more. So we've got our sort of lemony yellow paint. And I'm going to go right onto this wet paint and put it onto my petal that I have already put the water onto. And this is how you get watercolor paint onto a page. Pretty exciting, right? Here's the thing. I'm going to put this guy, I'm going to clean him off, put him on my paper towel. As you can see, I'm going to get this guy. The color, for the most part, is pretty consistent all over this petal. You can see, hopefully, that in some of the spots, the paint is starting to pool a little bit. And what happens when this happens is the lighter looking areas will dry light. And where you've got the pooled little bits, it's going to dry dark. And I'm going to leave those so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to leave it down here because I want down here darker anyway. So while the paint is still wet, it's quite wet because of the water layer we put down, and then of course this paint layer, we can play around with this and we can move this still wet paint around. So if I start up here and I just take a clean brush and I pull it down and I pull it down here, it's almost like you're wiping away some of that paint and you're pushing it down here to the bottom where the bottom of the petal is. And if you can see, there's a little pool of water right here because the paper is starting to buckle a little bit. And there's so much liquid here, it's just letting that liquid flow down into the lowest point. So you can keep pushing this around. You can keep pushing this around. I don't mind having it dark down here because that's kind of the look I'm looking for. Can you see how this is now a bit lighter and this is a bit darker? I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to take some of that dampness off on my paper towel, and I'm going to do this again. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to push some of this paint back down here. Get down there. And as you can see, it's still light, but we've got a bit of darkness here. And play around with that a little bit. While this is still damp, I can actually go into my yellow, take a little bit on this pretty dry brush, and drop a little bit in here and make it darker. Make it even darker here at the bottom. Can you see that? Where I've taken this sort of dry watercolor paint and I'm putting it into the now damp paint. This is how you can make that color darker. Do you see how this works now? It's kind of interesting. You can do different effects too. I've still got a bit of paint on this brush on the tip, and I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up. Pull up some stripes, some strips. You can see that's a little bit messy, but it's pulled some of the darker color up there. I'm going to clean off this brush. This is just to show you a couple things of what you can do. Make this a little drier. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to push this back down again. And this is how you can manipulate the paint and even move some of it so that you have some spots of your painting lighter and some darker. And once again, I can even go in here. I'm going to take a little bit of that water, this paint that we made up here. Put a little bit on here, add some more. Add some more. I'm just dotting in a little bit of paint. That's it. Just staying within those lines. And here's the thing. Remember how we initially put down that first layer of just plain old water with this big thick brush, right? That layer of clean water has made a barrier so that the paint is not flowing over into the next petal. This is one of the most magical things about watercolor that I love. And let me tell you, okay, I'm going to do a little story time here because watercolor, I was really intimidated by it. I was intimidated by watercolor. One time I bought some watercolor like in the pan like this, right? The little pucks of dried up paint. And I had no idea what to do. I wasn't smart enough to actually go on YouTube like now. I wasn't actually smart enough to do that and go see how to properly use watercolor. So I didn't get it. Like I didn't know how to work the paints. I didn't know what to do with it. And when you learn how to work with them, it makes it a lot less intimidating. So as this is drying, I'm gonna have some fun with this because you know what? I'm gonna clean off this little brush. You know what? Maybe I'll use the smaller guy. I'm gonna get the even littler guy. This guy. We're gonna get him all wetted up. And yes, we've got this darker yellow down here, a little bit lighter there. If I want to make this even darker, I can go in with a darker yellow. I can grab I need more water on this. I can grab some of this darker yellow and pop a little bit in here. Pop a little bit in there. Look at that. Look at that. Creating a bit of a shadow down here at the bottom. Look at that. Beautiful. You can dot it. You can swipe it. You can do whatever you want with it. And now you can see we've got this sort of goldeny, orangey kind of color here at the bottom. And you can see a little bit of a gradation of this darker color and moving up into the lighter color. This is the magic of watercolor paint. I hope this makes sense. And this is just our first layer. We're just getting started now. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off that brush, and I'm going to go back to the big guy. Where'd he go? This guy, the big guy. And I'm going to skip over this. I'm going to skip this petal because it's right against the one that's still wet and drying. And I'm going to come over and we're going to work on this guy. I mean, they're pretty close there. what can happen, let's see if we can make it happen. You might get a bit of this paint bleeding into this one, but that's kind of a cool effect. There are some artists who actually like the look of that when the paints bleed together, when they mix together like that. I don't mind it, but I think it kind of depends on what it is that you're doing. So if I do this and I go right up to the edge here, you can see, maybe you can't see, but a little bit of that yellow is spilling in here. Not mad at that, because you know what? We know what we're doing with this anyway. We're going to make this guy yellow. So let's go back over here into our palette. I got a little bit of orange mixing in there. And we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to take our brush and we're going to paint around our petal. There we go. Right down to the edge and in the middle. And as you can see, it's a nice pale yellow. Beautiful, lovely. I'm going to go back in here into our little puck of paint, and I'm going to add a little bit more here. I'm just going to put a little bit more because I want this a little bit darker along the edges and close to that trumpet. And there we go. I'm going to move that paint around. I'm just having some fun here. I'm just putting in a few more dots of paint, a few little stripes, whatnot. And you can see, again, we've got that gradation from the dark going into the light at the tips of the petals. I'm even going to clean this guy off, and I'm going back to our little tiny dude. I'm going to get him wet and go into our darker yellow like we did here. And same thing. I'm just going to go to the bottom of the petal, and I'm just going to wipe in a little bit of this dark orangey yellow. That's enough of that. That's even a bit too much. So I'm taking the paint off of my little tiny brush, and I just wiped him onto paper towel to get rid of some of the moisture. And you can actually pick up some of the paint and dab it off on your paper towel. You can pick up the paint. Look at that. See how much there was? I'm picking up that paint with my dry brush, getting rid of it because it was just a little too much for my liking. Now I'm going over and I'm just patting around on there, and we still got a little bit of that darker yellow. Look at that. Look at that. How hard was that? Come on. That's cute. That's super cute. I'm liking this. So we're going to keep going. That's right. We're on a roll, kids. So we're going to get our plain water. And I'm skipping, like I said, I'm skipping the petals so that I'm trying to avoid them bleeding into each other. So I got my nice thick water, trying not to make a mess around this trumpet, that little scalloped edge. And the good thing about round brushes is with the point, you can get into those teeny tiny areas and control the detail and amount of water that you're laying down. It really does help. I mean, you can do it with other types of brushes too, like filberts and flats and whatever. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. This is going to come in time when we talk more about supply. So there we go. We got some water down there. And now I'm going to grab more of this yellow that we have on our little palette here. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Beauty. Oh, I went to the wrong one. See? This is what happens. This is what happens when you're a beginner and you're chatting with your friends and you're not paying attention. So I'm taking a piece of paper towel. This is how you learn what you can and can't do. And all I'm doing is wiping it off. It is still wet. There is not a lot on there. Look at that. Like it never happened. Beautiful. And now I'm going to go in here to the petal that I intended to paint. And we're going to give a little wash of color here. Super cute. Right on that damp paper that we've already put our clean water on. So it's pretty wet. This technique is called wet on wet. So when you hear wet on wet, it means you've got wet paper with the clear water and then wet paint that you're putting in on top of it. There are other techniques too we may discuss as we go through this tutorial. Just going to see where the wind blows, where the wind takes us. Okay, I got my little guy again. I've decided. See, as I'm going along, this is sort of where, no, that's not what I want. See, I just put that in the wrong paint. As you go along, you can kind of pick and choose which supplies you want to be using. I'm going to bring this up here. A little bit of dark yellow there, a little bit there. Don't want too much. Too late. Too late. I can take some of that off. As you're going along, sometimes you're going to switch up the supplies that you're using based on the look you want. See, I just wiped this guy off and made him a little bit drier, and I'm picking up some of that paint. Picking some of that paint off. There we go. See, now it's a little bit lighter. Oh, I'm digging it. Okay, this is fun. This is good. Now I'm thinking when I put down the next color, I'm going to want that, want that yellow back. So we're going to put some more back. Because you know what? We can. We can. We have the power. We can do whatever we want. Because no one's the boss of us. Now, that's a bit too much. Let's dry this guy off again. And I'm going to take just a few little swipes to try and lighten this up. I think that has lightened it up a little bit. I don't want to take too much off because this is kind of a wonky shaped petal. It's just the way the composition is showing where the petal is sitting. So let's get our little guy here and get our darker yellow. And we're gonna pop a little bit here. Pop a little bit in the corner. And even up here, we're going to come up here and I'm going to talk a little bit about shade and light. Put a little tiny bit in there. Now this is pretty wet. I'm going to clean that off. We're going to dry them off on our paper towel. And I'm going to bring this up a little bit, just a tiny bit. And I'm going to take some of this orange off because now we're getting out of control. Now it's just a little too much for my liking. We had a little bit of spill over there. So I must have had that clear water going outside of the lines. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's a little better. That's a little more modest. That's a bit of a better blend. Let's talk about light source for a minute. I'm going to put my paintbrush down. I'm going to get my magic wand back again. This isn't magical either. Well, sunshine is magical, especially if you haven't seen it in a while. When it comes to light source, I want you to think about this. If this daffodil was sitting in a garden, if it's sitting in a garden or it's in a forest or in a meadow or wherever daffodils live, it's outside, where is the light going to shine onto this daffodil? It's probably going to be one of three places because it's coming from the sun. The sun is either going to be like high noon and shining right down on it. Maybe as the sun rises, it's going to be here. Or as it sets, it's going to be over here. But you're never going to have the light source or sun rising coming up this way. It just doesn't work that way. So since you know that the light source is coming from the top, this is a very general statement, but helps you understand shadow or shade and light. Very general statement. When you look at where the light source is coming from, down, on the top part of the daffodil will be lighter. And the bottom part of the daffodil, which is beneath where the sun is, will tend to be a little bit darker. That's just the way nature works. Now, there can be things that maybe light is bouncing off of, and it might come over here on the stem or come up here. That does happen in nature quite a bit. So you can have lighter spots on the bottom, maybe darker spots on the top, but this is just a general statement. So if you see that the bottom part's a little bit darker than the top, that actually does make sense. Think about this as well. When it comes to the petals and how they're attached to a flower, when you come in towards the center of the flower, no matter what flower it is, like here we've got the petals joining where the trumpet is. When you look there, where it joins, it's naturally going to be darker because where the join is, there is a bit of a dip. There's a little bit of a ditch in there. It's going to be darker because the light can't get in there. And when you look at the tips of the petals, they tend to be lighter or have light shining on them because they're closest to the sun because they're coming up to the sun. I hope that makes sense. The trumpet part is going to be the same. It's going to be darker down here and probably lighter in here when we get into the inside center part because the sun will be shining into it. And I hope that makes sense. You're going to see this with the stem too. I'm going to point that out with the stem as we put the paint down. That's just a little bit of talking about shade and light because I think it's a very valuable thing to understand no matter what you're doing when it comes to art. And I don't want to get too much into it and make it overwhelming because this is supposed to be like a quick fun thing, right? So now, let's see, I'm going to touch this guy. Yeah, he's pretty dry. How about this guy? Yeah, he's pretty dry too. So I'm feeling okay with working on this dude. So let's get our brush with our clean water. We'll use air quotes for clean because I can already tell it's got a yellow tinge to it. That's all right. That's okay. That is not a bad thing. Okay, I'm going around the curves and up to the point and around there. So, and you can even, depending on how the lighting is in the room that you're working in or if you're outside, you can see the shimmer of the water that we've put down. Now I'm going to add in some of our yellow. So I'm coming in here to get our yellow paint and voila. See, we're getting darker. Making that darker already. Pretty. Pretty. Okay, I'm going to clean that guy off. We're going to get rid of him and we're going to come back in with our little guy. I'm going to try and push some of that paint back. Is he dirty? Clean that guy. This is what I get for not having a separate glass of clean water. Shame on Nancy. This is how you learn. Do you think anyone else is going to show you how bad they screwed up? No, they're not. They're not. I will. This is what I call honest art. It's honest art. I'm going to show you exactly what I do wrong. Okay, here we go. Scooping up some of that paint. And I think from what I can tell, we got a lot of water there. Because the paper's buckling a little bit, it's tending to run down here and pool over here. And you know what? It's the bottom of the flower. It's towards the bottom of the petal-ish. So that's all right. And as this dries, I can just keep picking up more. I can just keep picking up more of that. And I can go into our little yellow puck here, our little yellow thingy, and add some more here, which is what we've done with the other ones. So let's continue the trend. And I'm just lightly dragging up some of that color, clean off my brush, and go back into our little dark yellow guy. And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna add some of that in here. Because that's what we do around here. That's what we do. Another thing to be aware of when it comes to watercolor is that it dries. I have to think about this. It dries darker than when you lay it down. And I'm just going to play with this paint a little bit. There we go. Okay. And just brought some of that orangey yellow up into more of the petal. I think that's cute. I'm not mad at that at all. All right. Let's keep going. Actually, before we do, where's my magic wand? I want to point out something. Can you see on this first petal that we did, there's a bit of a line here in the middle. And what this means, it's a bit of a boo-boo, not gonna lie. And I want to get something smaller to point this out. Excuse my arm. Let's use this guy. So we have this bit of a darker jagged line here. You can see that's darker there and lighter here. What's happened is when we put down the paint, we're moving stuff around and we're playing around and making things darker and lighter. As we stopped, some of the paint, so the pigment part, which is actually the color, has deposited itself in this jaggedy line and it stayed there. It just stayed there. So what we can do is, well, a couple of things. We could leave it. It's not a big deal. It's really not. And this is mostly dry. So we could just come in with our little guy and take some of that darker yellow and just fill in here. We could just do that. It's pretty dry. And now I'm using the paint sort of dry. We started out with our first layer of lots of really wet paint. And now look at us fixing things with practically dry paint. You see? You see how that goes? And now I'm going to wet this. I'm going to take most of the paint off, and I want to take some of that off on my paper towel. I don't want this to look so thick and chunky, so I'm just gently coming to the top and flicking this up a little bit just to give it a little more dimension. And yeah, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. And some paints actually you can reactivate after they've dried. We're not going to try that in this tutorial. We're just going to try and keep it easy, just keep it simple, right? We're going to keep going in and doing our petals with our dirty yellow water, because that's what we do around here. We use dirty yellow water. You're probably thinking, what is this crazy lady even talking about? That's all right. That's all right. Here we go. Okay, so we now have our water in. I'm going to go ahead and get some of our yellow that's on our palette. Drop that in. Look at this. See? Getting darker. Getting a little darker. Not mad at it. And we could even put some more. Let's get some of this yellow. Yeah, there we go. That's nice. And it's the kind of thing watercolor is that you got to play around with. It's funny. I was talking with a colleague of mine today, and we were talking about drawing and painting because I just had a little sketchbook at my desk. And she said, "Oh, do you draw? Like, are you an artist?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not a very good one, but you know." And she was talking about how she was watching watercolor artists. She said, "They make it look so easy." I'm like, "I know. They do. Because to them it is, you know." And so I told her that I was creating this channel. So, hey, if you're here, you know who you are. You know who you are. That's right. You know it, girl. If you know, you know. All right. So now I'm going to take my little guy, me and my story times. Listen, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I can't just do like boring instructional videos. Not that they're boring. I don't mean it that way. But I like to put a little life, put a little spice in. Going in now. Like the other ones, just go to the bottom, take our dark yellow. These are super cute. These are pretty. I like them. I'm going to put a little bit more of this dark yellow in. I don't even know what this color is. Like an orangey yellow. Should we find out? Let's find out. We're going to find out. You ready? Ready for it? Hang on. Oh, now I got to clean off my brush because I'm thinking this is too wonky looking. Ooh, look at me making big lines there. They look good too. Oh, I'm liking the look of that. I hadn't planned on really creating these kinds of lines in this particular project, but have you ever noticed that in the petals of a flower, they kind of have what look like veins coming up from the bottom? That's what I've sort of recreated here. When you see flowers with these dark bits at the bottom and then it's coming up to the top of the petal, quite often when it's going from dark to light, you can see like lines in that variation. And it gives it a little more depth and dimension. Like you want it to look like it's popping off the page and not just so flat 2D, if you can. Now, for this little dude here, this little guy poking out here, he's going to be really light. I'm not even going to put my water down. I'm just going to use my straight paint right off my palette because, yeah, I don't mind this guy being really light. There we go. Take a little bit of our yellow right from the pan and pop that on there. Oh, super cute. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to take some of this dark yellow and put a tiny bit in. This is this is the point where so many artists go, I'm just going to do one more little thing, and it's the kiss of death. So it could be that. It could happen right now. It could be the kiss of death, or we're going to see if I narrowly escape ruining my tiny little petal here. We just put a little bit, just like almost nothing. Okay, whew, that was close. Okay, I'm cleaning off my brush. Then we're going to just fan this guy out a little bit. Oh, yeah, okay. Ooh, had to hold my breath on that one. I thought I might end up with like just way too much and wreck it. Having said that, there's always ways to fix stuff. There really is. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you that when it comes to watercolor paint is pretty picky. This is why earlier I was saying that you start with a light coat, like you put on your light, and then you build up and build up and build up to get darker or to add darker colors. You've seen this in action. If you want to go from dark to light, lighten up a dark spot, good luck. It's probably not going to happen. This is where watercolor, being finicky, can be frustrating to work with. That's why it's really good to practice as much as you can. I mean, I would say that about anything when you're working with watercolor, but I would say that about anything you're doing. But enough about that. Let's get on to our trumpet. I think, are we dry enough? We're probably dry enough. Yeah. We're going to take our bigger of the two small round brushes, the bigger one. We're going to wet that guy. And I want the trumpet to be orange. So we're probably going to use a combination of a standard orange, maybe an orangey yellow, maybe a peachy color. I'm not 100% sure. But I'm just going to go right into my orange right in the palette. I'm not going to add my clear water because I want this to be dark anyway. And this isn't a terribly dark color. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to go in here and we're going to go along and we're going to fill in this whole part of the trumpet. The outside, not the inside part. We'll deal with him later. And I'm just going to come around here, fill it in, and get into those corners gently with my rounded brush. This is why I love that fine tip. It's great for getting details. I mean, you can get super tiny details with the tip of a brush, even if it's like the big dude like this. Okay, this one might be a little bit much. But even the big brushes, you can get a pretty small point if it's a good brush. Now, that was easy. Look at that. We just filled that in orange. However, it's pretty boring. It's pretty boring. Lovely, but boring. We want to put some dimension in here. We want to make it not look so flat like we did with our petals. It's the same kind of concept. So let's take our brush and clean it off. I'm going to clean it off and we're going to dry it off on our paper towel. And when I say dry it off, it's never going to be perfectly dry, but it's pretty dry. And I want to go in the center and I want to take up some of this paint. I'm going to lift some of the paint off. I'm not going to press too hard. And I can see that this is starting to dry already. And I'm just going to move it around a little bit. Sort of reactivated the paint a little bit. Hang on, let's do this. We're taking our orange and lifting it up, cleaning that off. And so what this is giving us now is a little bit of a darker look towards the edges and the bottom here of the trumpet. And then underneath the little scallop too, because there's going to be a bit of a shadow there. So it'll be a little bit darker. And then we have the lighter bit in there. I'm actually not mad at that. I could add a little bit more darkness down here and in the corners. Remember I was talking about the kiss of death? That could be it. So before I do that, I'm going to go in. I'm making the executive decision to go in here and fill in the light part of the trumpet. I'm going to go back into my water. So I'm going to get same brush. Just going to use the same brush. Get that wet. And I'm going to go into that light or that dark yellow, that darker yellow we were using here in the corners. And I'm just going to put that inside our trumpet. I'm going to go around the edges. Oh, I'm already liking this. It's super cute. I'm going to fill that in. And I'm going to clean off my brush and I'm going to dry it. And I'm going to pick some of this up. I want to make the inside of this trumpet part, I want to make it light. I want to make it light like the sun is kissing it. And you know what? This is actually looking pretty good. The colors are blending fairly well. Let's just do that again. There we go. You can see it's faded a little bit. And because I don't want this trumpet part to look super yellow, I'm going to go back into our orange. Just take a little dab on our almost dry brush and just put a tiny bit. Just dab a tiny bit around the edge. Just a little wee bit around the edge there. So it's not so yellow. It brings in that little bit of orange. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more. Where we would see there might be a bit of a shadow there around our trumpet. This inner part, and I'm just doing like a little jagged motion, that's all. I'm going to clean this guy off because I want to take up some more. Now that I have a little bit more than I want here, let's lift some of that off. Look at that. Clean it off on my paper towel. Keep lifting some of that orange off. And you can keep depositing paint and lifting it off as much as you want. With a caveat, here's what I will tell you. The more you work your paper with water, paint, anything that's wet, you run the risk of this pilling or what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I can get the little balls like the pills or even just bits of the paper coming up. So I'm not mad at that. And I am going to do one more thing that a lot of artists don't do. They don't use white watercolor paint. A lot of them don't. It kind of seems pointless because you can't put light onto dark and you're usually starting with a white piece of paper. However, I want this interior, I want this even lighter, and I don't want to try and lift more paint off. So there is a white in this palette. And I'm going to take a little bit of water and I'm going to get wet and activate this white and see what happens when we put a bit of white in here. We're just testing. We're just trying. I don't think I think if we, that lighten it up. It did. It's more about me pulling the paint off. I think that's making it light, but I'm not mad at that either. So there we go. I'm liking it. So we have our daffodil, and all we have left now to do is the little pistil, stamen, whatever that dude is. I keep saying I'm going to look it up to see what that's actually called, but it's not going to happen right now. So the little doodad is what we're calling it. And then our stem. So let's do the stem because I just want to do the stem. We're just going to do basic green. So I'm taking my little tiny brush because it's a pretty small area and very thin. And I'm going to go into a nice light green. I'm going to start with a nice light green and I'm going to put a little bit behind there. I am not pre-wetting this. I am not going in with my dry paint because you know what? I don't feel like it. Bottom line, I don't want to. I'm just going to go ahead, bring that up here, and just keep pulling the paint down. I'm going to turn this so you can see that a bit better. Let's go get a little more of that paint on my brush. So this would be considered, I need a little more water there. This is wet on dry. We're wetting the paint and putting it right onto dry paper. So we talked about the wet on wet. This is wet on dry. And then the other option typically is wet on damp. So it would be your wet brush. and then the paper would be mostly dry. Now you can also do dry, and I did that in one of the petals I think I did, where I dipped into the pan. Let me bring this over here. I dipped into the pan and put it on, and it was pretty dry. So you can even do dry on damp, I guess you might call it. Okay, let's get back to our flower. So as you can see, clearly I had a little more paint here, which has made it darker. And down here, it's a bit lighter. And I want to even this up a little bit. Not because I want it all to be the same color, but I'm going to go back to the whole light source thing where we were talking about the sun shining down. Once the sun passes the flower, right, you're going to see some of this stem is going to be darker. Closer to the flower, because underneath here that we can't see is that bulb, I guess you want to call it, that holds the trumpet and the petals and everything together and attaches to the stem. These petals are hiding a bunch of that. So it makes sense that it's a little bit darker here. I did this unintentionally, but I like the look. And it's getting lighter and lighter down here. Here's another thing. I imagine my light source coming in like this. Not straight down, but basically like this. Because think about it. This dude is pointing towards the sun, right? That's a good way to tell where your light source is. Chances are it's not over here if the flower is pointing this way. So if my sun is over here and coming down here, I'm going to make this a little bit darker. I'm going to take a darker green. I don't know which one this is. Just a tiny bit. I just took it right out of the pan and dun, 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 just made it a little bit darker. A little bit darker at the bottom. And it's got kind of a mottled kind of look. And I always say model like M-O-T-T-L-E, not M-O-D-E-L like supermodel. And there we go. Like that's how easy it is to do a stem and to just give it a little bit of dimension, a little bit of difference. Look at this. I can already see that the paint, the pigment part, which is the colored part of the paint, it looks like it's migrating over here. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I don't mind the look of it at all. We're not going for perfection here. We're not going for absolute realism. We want it to look like a daffodil. And so far it does. But what do we need? What are we missing? Yeah, that guy. That guy. We're going to wet our brush. What color do I want to use? I could use yellow ochre. Because I'm assuming that's what this is. Because I just know the color quite well. Let's see if we can do it. Oh yeah, I'm not minding that at all. Okay. There we go. Oh, so cute. Oh, so adorable. Oh my God, I love it. There we go. I just used a brownish yellow just to put that little guy in there. We could even define him some more. Oh my gosh, let's get some more brown. See, I'm having too much fun now. Okay. Can we do? I'm just going right into the pan. I'm raw dogging it, man. Ooh. I'm going to wipe that off. Remember I was talking about the kiss of death? This could be it. Okay, I just want to put a little bit, just a little bit. What are you doing? Oh, you're cooperating. Oh my goodness, look at this. Adorable. Adorable. So cute. So cute. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Nancy, you're going to wreck it. You're going to wreck it. Actually, I don't like the look of that. I have to do some more. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. What are you doing, lady? Yeah, kiss of death. Here it is. Oh, look what I just did. Okay, we're going to take our little eraser and do that. Oh yeah, way better. Oh man, if any of you are still here at the end of this video, you're my people. I'm telling you right now. Okay, so we've lifted some of that off. Let's see if we can, I'm going to come in here, get some of the paint that's on here. This is why if you see watercolor tins, these are basically your palettes, your mixing wells. They're a hot mess because you can just reactivate them with water and use that paint. Just keep using it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I'm telling you. Okay. You know what? I'm afraid to make this worse. So we're going to call it a day with that. Exactly. All right, here we go. We have painted a daffodil in watercolor. Normally, I would do a background and everything. Watercolor is so beautiful for backgrounds. I'm telling you, you can have so much fun with it. And aside from just the basic tools that we have used today, there's a lot of really fun techniques that you can do with watercolor. We're going to get into that in more videos. So be sure to watch the second video as well. We're going to continue on with this and do a few more fun things. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And don't forget to get your template. Get your template and redo this. Get your few supplies. Have some fun with this. And put questions in the comments. Please, if you're frustrated, if you're stuck, if you're unsure, make sure you're putting a comment in. That's what I'm here for. This is how we build the community, and we can all learn from each other too. Here's the other thing I'm going to say about that. If you have a question, there's a good chance someone else, at least one other person, has the same question or is going through the same pain point. And I don't want you to have to do that. So please reach out, let me know, put your comments, your questions down, and I will help you through it. All right, we're going to leave it there. So good luck with everything. Please let me know and comment if you tried recreating the daffodil. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, happy creating.